Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Comox Valley Water Committee, a meeting for June 6, 2023. Welcome all those in the gallery. Hi, Mom. How's it going? We've got a fairly, what looks like a fairly straightforward meeting today. We'll see how long staff take. A little housekeeping at first is the fact that, of course, for anybody that needs to use the washrooms, they're at the back here, out the hall, down in the corner. In case of emergency, we have emergency exits on my left and my right, your left, your right. And mustering point is in the parking lot. First thing to do is number one, recognition of traditional territories. I do recognize the fact that we're doing our business today on the traditional unceded territory of our Comox First Nation. First item of business, number C, resolution status report. I need a motion for receipt. Second. Moved and seconded on receipt. Is there anyone wishing to speak to the status report? Seeing none on receipt, all those in favor? And that carries. Number two, water master plan. There's a report here from May 30th regarding an overview of the water master plan process for the Comox Valley water system and a proposed scope of the planning study for receipt.
That's from the advisory minutes.
But I missed it. Oh, I missed the music. I missed the advisory. Well, we don't need those guys. They just advise you anyway. Okay, well, I'll back up a sec here, then a motion to receive the Comox Valley Advisory. Any questions on that? Seeing none, all in favor? And once again, a motion to receive the Water Master Plan. Moved and seconded. And over to Acting CAO for introductions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm pleased to introduce Zoe Berkey, our Senior Engineering Analyst, who will introduce the staff report and field any questions. So, Zoe.
Thank you, James. Through the CEO to the chair, to the committee, sorry. I have made a very brief PowerPoint just to walk through the scope. Bear with us 1 second as we pull it up. And get to the start of it, not the end. Here we go. So the report before you is the proposed scope for the Comox Valley Water System Water Master Plan. And the purpose of this document is to provide a comprehensive planning and report or document looking at the Comox Valley water system over the next 50 years. So there's kind of 5 main goals of what we're looking for this document to do. And that first one is develop accurate and projected water demand. So this is looking at growth in the valley within our water system, where that growth is occurring, and then what demands in terms of water are needed to meet those growths. And the second piece is the understanding the system and how to meet those future demands. So where are the weak points in our system now? Where do we have fire flow concerns? What are upgrades we need for fire flows? And what are upgrades we need to meet future demands, whether it's industrial, institutional, for different types of growth in different areas. The third piece is determining how conservation initiatives could delay capital investments or increase ask for our water license capacity. And so that we have kind of identified 5 kind of key initiatives that we want our consultant to look at for this item, being water meters, water kind of sprinkling, scheduling, and time, trying to shave a bit of our peak off because we see a huge peak in our system, that moment that the sprinkling time turns on in the day, water rebates, education, and then water meters. The fourth item is to assess the need and the options for better separation between the regional transmission and municipal distribution systems. And I'll touch on that one a bit more on the next slide. And then finally, bringing this all together into a clear vision of our future water system. So what upgrades are needed in the next 10, 20, and 50 years to meet growth and demands? So key to this process is engagement with our municipal partners. So this is a very collaborative process that we need a lot of input from our municipal partners for success. And so understanding that everyone is short on time, we've reached out to municipal staff and have kind of developed a plan for engagement at key points in the process to ensure that our master planning document aligns with the City of Courtenay Water Master Plan and the Town of Comox planning documents as well. In addition, there's a lot of work to be done on clearly defining this problem and the critical areas between separation and distribution. So, for example, on the slide, the red line is the water distribution main that's owned by the City of Courtenay. In blue are the CVRD distribution mains that are off of the City of Courtenay line. So you can imagine if there's a main break on the City of Courtenay line, right where it feeds the CVRD connections, we have this kind of operational challenging who owns what valve. And there's a lot of kind of confusion and challenges that arise with having this kind of shared distribution and transmission system. And, some areas are more problematic than others. And so the intent of this scope of the work is to understand where are the areas where this occurs, where we have CVRD distribution off City of Courtenay transmission and vice versa. And then, is it a critical area? Do we need to resolve this or address it now? Can it be addressed in the future? What is the risk of having these kind of intertwined transmission and distribution systems? So our proposed next steps is to release a request for proposals for the water master plan to get a consultant on board in the summer. And that would be kind of looking for a consultant to kind of complete the scope that's outlined in Appendix A of the report, and then have that contract awarded to the successful proponent and beginning the work in early fall. Taking about a year to complete that work, in the spring of 2024, have that master plan completed. And through that process, as I mentioned previously, at key points, we'll be engaging with municipal staff to make sure we're all aligned with growth, the transmission distribution challenges, water conservation, all of these different aspects of the plan. And then completion of that water master plan in the summer or fall of 2024. That's all I have. We're happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, directors? Director Arbor.
Yeah, thanks, Zoe, for the succinct presentation on a big topic. Can go back like 2 or 3 slides to the CVRD and City of Courtenay boundary, because I think that's something that comes up all the time. One thing that comes up all the time at this table is vote and water meters, and Mayor Wells often brings up the City of Courtenay providing a lot of transmission for us. And the reason why I bring this up is that very area in Area A is a great example. This is off of Arden. So as you, on the left side is Cumberland Road. And that's the reason why I'm sitting at this table. This is currently, for the last decades, the only homes that Area A has in the system, about 100 homes or so. And we've also had discussion, not with the water committee, but with the planning staff around the RGS and settlement boundary expansions and the rest of it. And I've knocked on those doors at both election, all of those doors. And apparently I was the first area director to kind of know that so we're actually there prior to an election. And so for me, there could be deeper conversations around, this is definitely a neighborhood that for me, it'd be interesting to engage with residents to see if they would want to be part of the City of Courtenay. There's some history behind that, but time goes on, and other than negotiating an agreement around the pipe, the main reason why they didn't connect was around sewage. So a lot of those homes are still on septic, but they are density. The City of Courtenay has now reached that boundary where there's a lot of development happening on the other side of the road. And I'd be curious to see the economics. I think that the right way to do boundary expansion is to have transparent processes where rural areas and the municipalities come together. And I think this would be a great case to look at around that neighborhood and engaging residents, rather than trying to figure out a cost share or something like that. So I just thought I'd provide that for feedback. I realize that we're going to onboard Royston, and probably the need to figure out the the share around the transmission will still be there, but for little pockets like that, I'd be definitely open to explore alternatives. I was curious to see it there and made me smile before Mayor Wells have comments. I thought I'd bring it up as a constructive kind of a suggestion.
Thank you very much, Director. That gets us off on a different start. I think alternate Director Wells. Oh, I'm sorry. There's an answer to that question. You okay? Yeah,
Maybe
it's
just-
kind of rhetorical.
Sorry, just briefly. Yeah, I think what our intent here is to, address or define the problem as our first step. I think, is it an agreement is maybe kind of further down the road. It's where are these areas and what is the problem that these areas are creating for us is kind of our first step, and working with the city and the town to just kind of address them is kind of where we plan to go first, and then we can progress that discussion as we go.
Thank you very much. And Director Will Cole Hamilton's online. Director?
Yeah. Yep. Thanks, Edwin. And I'm going to apologize for my mic. I could not find the my headphones for today. But I just wanted to say I really appreciated staff acknowledging the load of consultation that takes place here and keeping the municipalities. I think there's still probably about 10 hours of face-to-face meetings that are taking place, and probably with preparation and getting to and from, that's 20-25 hours for staff. So just appreciate RD staff being really mindful of those consultation and the burden it places. And I just had actually a fairly simple question, which is I noticed that the scoping document was dated January of last year. I was wondering if there's any particular reason that we waited before moving ahead with this, or if anything had changed maybe in that time period.
Yes, that's a misstate. We have updated the document from January of last year. Sorry for that. Good catch. We did kind of start this process last year and do some staffing challenges. We kind of put it on hold. So we're brushing off the cobwebs and bringing it back now.
Great. Figured that was it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And now alternate Director Wells.
Thank you, Chair. And yeah, thanks very much, staff. It's great to see this report coming forward. Obviously, thank you to Director Arbor for saying some of the things I was already going to say. But, as really the core center of expansion, the city of Courtenay is going to have a lot of pressures over the next 10 years, I would say. And whether we're talking about the 30 acres at Glacier View Lodge or many other properties that, are greenfield or even the infield side of things, really glad to see this coming forward. And yeah, also mindful of the time it's going to take our staff as well at the city, but obviously critical information and to move forward. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. And Director Kerr.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just question about, looking out 50 years. I love the idea of a 50-year plan. That excites me. But when I think 50 years out, I think, what could be different in 50 years? So thinking about climate change, thinking about sea level rise, thinking about earthquakes, natural disasters, heat domes, all those things. So I didn't really see in the scoping document too much about, risks to the plan. It's great to have a 50-year plan, but what about the risks if our water supply is threatened or other like environmental effects happen? Just curious about whether that will be part of the report. Thanks.
Maybe I'll start and then I can pass it over to Chris. I think our focus here is, it's definitely on the water conservation piece and the capital upgrade piece, but it's more focused on, those capital improvements that are needed to meet the future demands. And so I think there's definitely an environmental piece. It might not be quite highlighted enough in that scope of, what is our water license and that capacity and what happens when we get closer to that capacity in terms of kind of more general climate change initiatives. I don't think that's the intent of this document, to fully kind of capture, the risks of the system as a whole in terms of watershed protection, but in terms of, the risk to a water main that's in the street, that's kind of the level we're looking at is, what is our water system? What does it need to make it out those 50 years? Like, is what upgrades need to happen? maybe it's an upgrade based on condition, maybe it's an upgrade based on a climatic factor that's like, it's going to be submerged and you can't get to that pipe because it goes under the river. Bad example, but something to that extent is kind of what we're looking at in this document, is trying to cover all the different types of upgrades that are going to be driven in our system over the next 50 years, not looking quite at the watershed level.
Thanks.
Chris?
That's a good response. The only thing I would add to that is that we're very much viewing this as a live document. So while we are looking at 50 years out in the future, we expect to be reviewing and updating this document on a much more regular basis. So as these types of risks, we get a little bit more clarity on them in terms of what's coming, and we'll be able to adjust and continue to do so. So over that 50-year period, we may revisit this plan, at least 5 times, if not closer to 8. So between 5 to 10 years, we'll be updating the planning process. So this is the first, it is intended to be a live document and be updated over time.
If I could get you to turn your mics off after you're through, that's great. Director Hillian, I think you're next.
Thanks, Chair. Getting back to the capacity issue for other local governments, and I don't think this is just something that comes up with water, but I'm just wondering if through our meetings of CAOs or through any other forum, there's an opportunity to project the scope of major projects that are going to occur over, say, the next several year period. And what sort of staff capacity is going to be required with our regional systems. And if there's a way of doing that, then it gives other local governments the opportunity to actually budget in the staffing that will be required to fully collaborate to the extent that we would all wish. I don't know if it's something you can respond to, if you feel that already happens, or if there's room for it within the scope of all the work that the CVRD does.
I think there's always room for improvement. We do our best. We do regularly meet with the CAOs. It's a bi-weekly meeting that we have with the CAOs currently. Range of topics that are covered, projects and policy and other actions that are being taken. We can do better in terms of our forecasting and our analysis and projecting the workload that's expected. That goes internally and with our partners as well. So it's always an area that we can improve upon. And I think this is a good project where we are forward looking and anticipating what that work might be, so that it's able to be introduced into those work plans, and then our partners can look to determine their level of involvement and hopefully incorporate some hours and some support, because we see there's value to the municipalities as well in this work, not simply to the CVRD.
Totally agreed, and I'm sure the municipalities have projects that would be helpful if the CVRD knew about in advance as well. So it's something that we can all continue to strive for, hopefully. For sure. Thanks.
Yeah. And Chris, I'm not sure if you want to add to that.
Chris?
Yeah, thanks, James. Just to add to your response, I just wanted to highlight that that this work is intended to complement the recently completed asset management plan for the system. So asset management plan looks at when infrastructure is likely to be replaced due to risk and condition, whereas the water master plan will complement that by looking at when infrastructure needs to be upsized because of capacity. And so those two together, once this is complete, we'll combine those two works and then develop or update our development cost charge and a much more robust 10+ year capital plan for this service in a way that we haven't been able to do as of late, just without this planning process having been done. So I think once this is complete, we'll have a much better idea, and we'll be able to communicate that to the municipalities, our counterparts, in terms of what's coming for the service.
Thank you. Director Hardy.
Thanks, Chair. Again, just looking at long-term, 50 years down the road, et cetera, and in understanding we see keywords like conservation. I'm just wondering, in regards to conservation, with regards to planning, if there's any consideration with regards to water storage, when we consider that thousands of decameters of water that get released into the marine environment on a daily, monthly, annual basis. So again, just looking at long-term planning, is there any consideration with regards to water storage? And also maybe other future technologies with regards to desalinization of marine waters for potable water, et cetera. Thanks.
I guess the short answer is that, not at this point in time. And we were asked a couple of years ago to look at one specific idea of adding storage upstream in the Comox Lake watershed. And the conclusion at that time was that it was a very expensive proposition and highly complex in terms of permitting. So at this point, with our recently secured water license for the service that was obtained through the water treatment project, and at that time we worked through a very rigorous study process with the province to justify that additional license, and in close partnership with the Comox First Nation. So that at that time we were provided a 25-year horizon within which we were able to kind of demonstrate projected demand. Our belief is that with implementation of some of the water conservation measures that will be studied through this process, we will likely be able to extend the horizon on the existing water license beyond that 25 years, which was calculated based on maintaining our existing per capita consumption. So all that to say, I think that could very well be a focus of future iterations of this water master planning process. But at this point in time, we're looking at least at 25 years out with adequate water license capacity.
Just to add, I think that conservation is probably the one of the primary focuses rather than increased volume or increased storage at this time.
I'll just chime in quickly here. We have other speakers, but I think Director Grant and I were on the Water Supply Commission shortly after the dissolution of the Comox Strathcona RD, and the directive at the time was from the ministry was that 1/2 of all water for new connections will be supplied through conservation. So we sometimes think we keep building a bigger pipe, and maybe that's just not the answer. I think Director Arbor wants to chime in. Director?
Yeah, I know we had a touch base during the orientation month and a little bit budget, but it might be good. I don't know if staff is planning to bring back sort of a 101 on the status of capacity and conservation, because I think there's also a lot of myth that persists in the general public. My understanding from last term is that a lot of our water reservoir is mostly dictated by BC Hydro's use, and that short term we do not. I hear that from people all the time. They say Comox Lake is going to dry up. Comox Lake is going to dry up like in the next 5 years, and I'm like, no, but it might be good to have once a year bring that back to the public, so we build that understanding that that particular reservoir is not as much as at risk as some of the other places. When Dr. Hardy's talking about desalination, those aren't the kind of places like if we had massive groundwater failure on Hornby Island, for example, which is becoming increasingly dry. That's and we're starting to have water wells report and wells report and all that, and it's not the case there either. But it'd be probably the places would see it before Comox Lake. But I think if you can bring back a report that gives us the baseline of what we know. And second is, I do have the question. I was talking to somebody who works at BC Hydro, and I won't name the person, but they were saying, they're not sure that long term that particular hydro facility is necessarily going to be needed or fit perfectly in the broader needs. So it'd be interesting to know if if we're having a 50 to 100 years plan, what would it mean if they were actually not in operation there? And if we were having to look after the lake ourselves? That's great questions.
And Director Kerr.
Thank you. Just another point on the conservation piece. I just would really love to see those recommendations be, a range from, easy ones to very, very bold recommendations. I mean, we are so lucky in the Comox Valley. We have a glacier above us, a lake beside us, and infrastructure beneath us. And we forget that so much of the world does not have access to fresh water. And so much, even of North America now, has lack of fresh water. If you look at the lawn watering ban across pretty much all of the state of California and much of Western United States, it makes us, look less responsible when we're, having, practices such as, lawn watering, even though it's restricted, even though we have different water restriction levels. I just think we should explore all possibilities and all conservation methods available, because it will hit us. And also, if it doesn't in the near future, it's also a responsible action as a community to not be wasting water on certain practices that most of the world can't afford to do. Thanks.
Well put. Director Hillian.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to reinforce, I think that those are some excellent points. There are reports as recently as today about the scale of climate change and the impact it's going to have on making certain areas of the planet uninhabitable. And the sorts of migrations that we've seen in recent years, in my view, are small scale compared to the pressures that we're going to have with mobile populations in response to those issues. And the idea that we can maintain this oasis that we live in with the practices that we have indefinitely is just a fallacy. So anything that we can build in that helps us to practice better conservation is what we really need to do. Thanks.
Director Morin.
Thank you, Chair. I was just curious, just in light of the ag planning that's happening and regarding the comments that have been made about climate change. And we know California is a great example of where we get a lot of our food from. And we're certainly locally looking at ways to increase local food production. And water, of course, is key to the agricultural community. And I just wondered if any of that, if there's been any kind of complementary planning between the ag planning and this water master plan in terms of that aspect. Thanks.
Chris.
So no direct link planned between this planning process, and I know that there is a planning process underway in the Solom river or watershed. So certainly what I can do is commit to check in with the staff that are on that and look to see if there are any opportunities for overlap. Yep.
So I think we all agree that this is the challenge of the age. Fresh water, being what it is absolutely essential for life. We obviously undervalue it. A lot of the tools aren't in our hands. When you talk about things like purple piping, things like cisterns, a lot of these issues run up against the roadblock of provincial government, even though a lot of this is common practice around the world. Maybe I seem to remember that less than 7% of all potable water is actually drank by humans. It's minuscule. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a little under 30% is pretty well flushed down the toilet. And then we see the great spikes that we get every summer, and we know that that's using potable water for non-potable water. Results in lawns and shrubbery and what have you, not agricultural production. So I do think that this has to be taken so seriously because things can change so quickly. You know, we are pampered little first world brats, and we just accept this stuff as our birthright. You take a look at the Tigris River, one of the cradles of civilization. Once huge swamps, a big river, wildlife and waterfowl. A cradle of civilization, as I said, and now it's reduced to a trickle, if that. So this can happen. It can happen here. So you know, the actual conservation of water should be our number one priority. We've already put in the pipes. We've already put in the processes, and bigger pipes is not the answer. We see jurisdictions like Phoenix, Arizona, where they're running out of water. Kansas, I think they're depleted most of their aquifers. I mean, where's the water going to come from? So when it comes to agriculture, like when you brought up, it's I think Edgar Smith made a presentation at the Comox Valley Farmers Institute saying basically no water, no farming. And yet you look at the regulations, and I drive home every day to Merville, and sometimes I take Bridges Road and other roads out off headquarters, and you see people in the heat of the day with the big irrigation going. Now, how much of that actually gets to the ground? How much is transpired? So we really have to take this a lot more seriously than we are. And you know, I think we've got the wherewithal here in the Comox Valley. We've got a huge water source at Comox Lake, not as huge as the Campbell River and the whole Buttle Campbell Lake system, but considerable. But we shouldn't abuse it. We shouldn't take it for granted. So I'm hoping that we get some good input from our respective staff on this, because the time for action is right now. We talk about looking 50 years in the future, man. I don't think we can look 10 years in the future. So anyway, that's my 2 cents worth. Little cheery note. Thank you. Any more discussion? No. Okay. So on receipt, all those in favor? Move to second on the recommendation. Any further discussion on that? Seeing none on the recommendation, all in favor? That is carried. No new business, no addendum.
Second.
Termination, all in favor? Carried. Thank you very much, everyone.